Uniquely Human, the podcast, is produced by Elevated Studio. Music is graciously provided by Matt Savage of Savage Records.
My name is Dr. Barry Prezant, and welcome to Episode 5 of Uniquely Human, the podcast. And a big hello to my co-host and partner, Dave Finch.
Hello. I gave you a Doppler hello. It started there and went back. We just had Becca Laurie Hector on last week, and she was talking about quality of life, and we had a really good discussion about that. Before that was Steve Silberman, and then we had Chloe Rothschild, who is just a brilliant speaker, an advocate for people with assistive communication devices. And today, we are joined by a parent whose life changed dramatically when his son was diagnosed with autism in 1981. Dr. Robert Naseef is a man who struggled terribly with the diagnosis at first, but then adopted a new perspective that transformed his relationship not only with his son, Tariq, but with autism itself. So after Tariq was diagnosed, Robert went on to become a clinical psychologist, author, TED speaker, and he is now one of the leading American voices in the autism discussion. He's on Zoom with us now. Hi, Robert.
Dr. Robert Naseef, it is such a pleasure for you to join us on Uniquely Human, the podcast.
Likewise, Barry. I've known your work long before I've known you.
You just have a unique ability to kind of go seamlessly back and forth in terms of being a father and how that informs your professional work, and then how your professional work informs the way you reflect and communicate your experiences of being a father. So I was just wondering, how did this all begin? Your son Tariq is 40 years old now?
Well, it all began when he breathed his first breath. And I guess the autism aspect began around 18 months when he stopped speaking, started flapping, pacing, tantruming. I was a teacher at the time. I taught remedial reading and writing. I taught in a literacy program. I thought, well, if I could teach kids who dropped out of high school, I could teach my son. But it wasn't to be. The autism was unrelenting and severe.
You were not a clinical psychologist at that time. You were a teacher.
No. I was a classroom teacher. I ran a learning lab for students with learning disabilities at the college level. So I ran a support program like kids on the spectrum would go to today. And I'm sure we had kids on the spectrum, but in those days they were diagnosed learning disabled or social learning disability.
So when you were raising Tariq, did that kind of put the seeds in your mind of going maybe out of teaching and into clinical psychology?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I was struggling as a parent, struggling with the grief, struggling with what do I accept, what do I change, what do I have to live with, and in the program where Tariq was a student, the Center for Autism in Philadelphia was run by a wonderful psychiatrist. He treated our kids like his grandkids.
That was Bert Ruttenberg?
That was Bert Ruttenberg. He was,
Bert, yes.
He took me under his wing. He asked me to come on the radio with him for an autism awareness show in like 1986 or 5 or something, and I was terrified. And he was like, no, you're a parent. I'll be with you. Just come with me. This will be okay. And he really got me started. And the folks that work there who were reading your work at the time on communicative intent. So the therapists were reading your work on communicative intent. They're passing me the articles. Bert's, like parenting me a little bit. And, that's how it started.
So that's 35, 40 years ago. And
yeah.
At the time, what you had access to in terms of information about autism was not as progressive. by a long shot as what we're seeing today.
Oh, no. You could go to the library, like the university library. There's like one shelf of books. There was one journal. There was the Autism Research Institute. I could literally read everything about autism within a year of my son's diagnosis. There was nothing else. It was 5 in 10,000. And so it was really hard to meet other people or get in a conversation.
That just wasn't there for you. I can't imagine how difficult that was to absorb that information and then look around and feel lost.
So that's where Burt Rutenberg came in. He was like, you're a parent who can talk about this. Why don't you help other parents here? And I was like, whoa, I'm in this up to my eyeballs. And he's like, no, you can talk about it. He understood the grief parents had, and he had amazing confidence in the kids and their innate ability to develop along whatever was possible. It was like, well, look at what he can do. And then I realized, and his therapists were saying, they were celebrating every little thing. And I was like, well, he doesn't go home with you. You're crazy. That's what I was thinking. But they kept saying, but look at what he can do. Look at what he can do. And I finally realized this is about me. This isn't about him. I'm looking at what he can't do. I'm losing the love I had for him from his first breath. Like, I got to get on board with this. And that turned me around. People saying, look at what he can do. Have fun with him. Do whatever he wants. Follow his lead. And it got into me. And it's never left. And that's the message I try to help parents have and understand. And this is where another part of the story comes in. My son is a man of color, and I think I was only able to access the Center for Autism because of my privilege of being educated and being identified as white and so on, that I was able to have the confidence to go for a second diagnosis and push to get him what turned out to be, over a long period of time, the best services that were available for a child and a young person with autism. It was really a privilege that the other kids in his early intervention class, who were mostly Black, did not have. So that's part of the message I'm carrying forward today, is we have a lot of work to do to equalize and correct the social inequities within the autism diagnosis and treatment.
Well, the stakes are so high for Tariq and other Black men and women, boys and girls with autism. The Black community doesn't get anything even remotely near a fair shake when it comes to things like law enforcement. And now if you've got a nonverbal Black adult male stimming or not responding and complying the way the police officer needs him to. I mean, we're seeing what happens when you have a non-autistic individual who just turns his back and steps into his car.
And it goes so deep in so many ways. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, Robert, but I believe some of the research demonstrates that young Black kids, especially boys, are much more likely to get misdiagnoses of behaviorally disordered as opposed to autism spectrum.
Totally correct. Either behavior disorders, intellectual disorders, global developmental delay. And actually, my son got the global developmental delay. And of course, I was in denial. I thought he was perfect. He'll be okay. But it wasn't global developmental delay. It was autism. And Dr. Rutenberg saw that and explained that and built a clear case for his autism services.
How does that then lead you to go about supporting parents who may not have the privileges that you say you have due to your race, due to your education, that I have, that Dave has? How do we help parents have that confidence to follow their intuition, to keep persisting, to make sure that they're getting the best services and that their kids and they are respected?
Well, it's a steep hill to climb. But one of the sayings from our generation, Barry, from the 60s was information is liberation. So we can't underestimate the power of the true awareness of what autism is and how we need to push for the services. But that alone isn't enough, because this is like baked into the structural racism of the system and the class nature of the system. So as soon as you get out of the wealthy school districts, it's harder and harder to get an autism diagnosis because it costs more. So the system incentivizes misdiagnosing kids. And that's just so insidious. So I think we have to like support parents, help parents, but that alone is not enough, because any parent, white, black, any race or ethnicity, sit down with a team of professionals telling you that your concerns are not autism, that's pretty hard to resist. So we need like a network of advocates and system navigators. We need more class action suits to equalize services. We need a lot. We need to expose the systematic racism, whether it's conscious or unconscious. I think it's both. And there's not enough professionals to go around. This most recent study in the Journal of Pediatrics in September, Constantino documented that while there's been some progress, there's still a 3-year delay for Black parents from their first concerns to the diagnosis. It takes 3 years.
Oh.
They see multiple providers. They have trouble finding providers. And plus, he didn't even talk about the misdiagnoses, but 3 years. And they're asking questions, right? I mean, people are asking the questions more and more. And they feel the vulnerability. So I diagnosed like a 12-year-old African-American boy a couple years back. And his dad is sitting in my office and he's like, "You got to help him understand, doctor. He keeps keeping his hoodie up." And I tell him he's going to be a target. He's going to be a target for the police. And so that's where then the social piece came in. Like, here was a kid, considered high functioning, but he doesn't understand the social implication. And he was of mixed race. He looked like Trayvon Martin. He didn't understand why his father is like on his case, like, take the hoodie down.
Absolutely.
And our professions too, we don't have enough Black professionals. And research shows in mental health and psychology, people are more comfortable with somebody from their background. And we have so little of this,
So what are you hearing? Now it's been, I'm not sure, at least 3 years, maybe more than that you've been running dads groups at Drexel University, and including men of color. And what are you hearing from the dads in terms of their firsthand experiences?
Well, we're hearing stuff like this. So it's actually just the second year, but we're going strong.
Oh, okay.
So one thing that makes this group work is that my co-facilitator, Michael Hannon, is a Black counseling psychology professional. So we're very intentional. We're urban-based. We're very intentional about being multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-faith. And we're hearing, how powerful that is for guys who aren't used to sharing the same space, talking about. So we're together because of autism, but particularly this summer, I mean, it was hard to have a meeting where race wasn't an issue. The George Floyd murder, we contemplated it silently. We talked about it. Guys talked about how their kids didn't understand the curfews. They were grateful that we were bringing them together, but the vulnerability of the Black families was really striking. And I think it helped white guys understand their privilege, and we talk about it, and I talk about it, This is a safe place for all these conversations. You can be upset that your kid smeared feces, and we can laugh about and celebrate progress, and anything you're experiencing or thinking about is okay here. That's the power of the group that Black guys and white guys talk about.
I just want to put it out there how monumental it is just to get dads in general to open up and speak with each other.
That's right.
That's amazing. But then when you talk about, dads of color and dads who've been kind of pigeonholed into different categories and discriminated against, that added a whole other layer.
Yeah, it's very powerful. Yeah, I think as boys growing up, we're really trained to hold in the tender side of our emotions. Like we could be angry, but it's not okay to be worried or sad so much, and putting words to it. I mean, I don't find that the men feel differently than their female partners, but I do find they have trouble putting words to it. So one meeting started out with a guy talking about he was mad about something with his son's services, and he was apologizing, and we were like, no, don't apologize, talk about it. You're here, you don't have to apologize to us. And he had a legitimate beef with what was going on. So we try to provide that space, and gradually guys have become more comfortable sharing really the spectrum of their emotion, in a sense. There's more of that.
And that's so important, because then you're not carrying that around home, and you're more accessible to your child at home.
So often when we try to help professionals understand, we talk about the natural maternal protective instincts. So I'm just curious what you think about that in terms of paternal instincts to, kind of protect their child's name, reputation, whatever it might be.
Oh, yeah, that's really present for dads. I mean, and it's part of our traditional, kind of role as men, to protect our families, protect our loved ones. And, we want to protect our kids. We want to make them we want to get them ready for the world. We want to get the world ready for them.
So so well from your experience and your work that when you might meet a parent, they're at a very different place in their journey than another family, another parent. And so I'm just wondering, how do you help in your teaching other professionals to understand that it's up to us to calibrate our understanding of where that family is at based upon where they are in the journey, rather than just assume that a family that just received the diagnosis should be interacted with the same way as parents, or a single parent even who has a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old?
So I have a kind of simple answer, Barry. And I got it from Dr. Ruttenberg. You start where the kid is and make contact and help them grow from there. That's the simple way he taught it. And he helped me understand you also start where the family members are, join with them there, and help them grow from there. So when I meet somebody for the first time, I have to, kind of put aside any of my own, lens and just listen and see where they're at and see, well, what's the next step? Sometimes my favorite next step is just, when are you enjoying your child? Because nobody asks them that. They ask them, does he stim? Does she have taste sensitivities? They ask, people ask a litany of problem questions. So I try to ask, well, what's your kid good at? What do they like? What do you like doing with them? And they're like, nobody ever asks us that. And so it kind of changes the paradigm of the conversation. So that's how I try to do it, but also to be deeply respectful of wherever they're at. I mean, I don't know their situation. I don't know who they were before they had a kid diagnosed. And I don't know what that did to them. It really, it kind of depends, what did you bring into the situation? How did you grow up? I want to start to get to know them as the uniquely human people they are, to borrow a phrase.
How can men specifically avail themselves of your group and become involved?
Great. Well, they can email Direct Autism Institute, and they will put it on our list and get an invite every time we're meeting. And we've had people from as far away as Hawaii get up at 4 a.m. We've had some people from the Middle East and Canada, and we have regular people from Chicago and Texas and Florida, and the core group is in Philadelphia. But we really hope to grow this into a network. And we're also in an informal network with other fathers groups of children with special needs that comes out of the Washington State Fathers Network. So we're trying to build this bigger, and the pandemic's gives us an opportunity to spread our wings. We reached people we weren't reaching before the shutdown. So we're really grateful for that, and we're trying to carry this message of
Barry's landscaping crew just broke out a marimba solo. This was so eye-opening for me, and now I just have... This is one of the things I love to do, is have a discussion with somebody like you that then introduces 1,000 more questions that I want to go and explore. So this has been tremendous for me. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, I guess we're going to say farewell now.
Yes, farewell till we meet again.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Take good care.
All right.
Bye for now.
You too.
Thanks, Robert.
Bye.
We've got a pretty interesting topic today, involving some controversial language, in fact. This is, high functioning and low functioning autism. And we have, not really a different perspective on these terms, I think, but I think we relate to them a little differently. Not certainly this is a hot issue of late, but you actually wrote an article about this almost 10 years ago. It's called High and Low Functioning Autism, a False Harmful Dichotomy. And harmful is in parentheses with a question mark. So this is something that you've been sensitive to, certainly for most of your career.
Mm-hmm. And let me begin by taking a step back. One of the reasons I wrote this article was that, of course, just being in the field, I would hear people referring to an individual, to a child, as high functioning or low functioning. And I found that I could not allow my mouth to say those words or phrases.
Yeah.
That I just, on a very gut level, I just felt uncomfortable using those terms. And then I needed to explore why I felt uncomfortable using those terms. So at first it was very much at a gut level. I guess you could say at a gut level, it struck me as disrespectful. But I still didn't know why I had this feeling that I'm just not going to say high and low functioning. I'm sorry. One of the reasons that when I kind of explored why I felt uncomfortable with it, in a sense, there were two tracks. One track was, I'm sorry, the academic in me. And there were these articles about, conversational skills in high functioning persons with autism. And then I would look for a definition of what does high functioning mean. And very often in these studies, they didn't really define it. It was just kind of this descriptive term that was used. So from an academic research perspective, they were kind of qualitative terms that were just thrown out there.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Also, being a speech language pathologist, as I began to dig into the reasons why I felt uncomfortable, for example, we know that those terms are very often aligned with, for example, high functioning is a person who talks a lot, okay? Who uses fairly sophisticated language and vocabulary. But then I know from my field, there are people who are incredibly bright, if not brilliant, but have problems talking, such as people with cerebral palsy. Mm-hmm. Classic, what's called motor speech disorders.
Right.
So I began to ask, wait a second, I'm very comfortable with the notion that talking is not necessarily directly related to intelligence, or the ability to talk is not. But yet, when we see a person with autism who doesn't talk, people think right away, that's a low functioning person. The other issue is I found that people spoke about high functioning and low functioning relative to whether a person had, here's another term, quote unquote, a lot of problem behaviors or not. In our lingo, is this person often dysregulated emotionally or physiologically that it leads to screaming, dropping to the floor, bolting out of the classroom. So I tried to understand what were the factors that kind of earned a person the label of high or low functioning. And then all my years with the parents at the parent retreats and parents of so-called high functioning individuals, talking about, my son's anxiety is so debilitating at times that he won't get out of the basement. Yet everybody thinks that he's perfectly capable of living his life almost normally.
Right.
So, and I was actually going to ask you, I'm sure that's not the case that when Kristen finally kind of said, Dave, my husband, I think you're on the spectrum, she probably didn't say, but don't worry, you're high functioning.
No, but at the same time, the weirdest thing is I would not have had a problem introducing myself at a speaking engagement as I would consider myself to be high functioning. I don't say that, but I also know that when I went and spoke at the Autism Society of Ohio, or like Southeastern Ohio or something, they brought me out to speak at a medical campus and for a bunch of families and clinicians, and I did. And they were very concerned about, will you need a handler when you get to the airport? And I said, oh, no. My speaking contract, I don't, I thought they meant somebody who would just kiss my ass for the weekend and like make sure I got fed and everything. They meant literally like, do you have the ability to get off a plane, find a taxi without harming yourself or something? I was like, whoa, no, we might be on two different wavelengths. And so for the efficiency of conversation, I said, I think I'm high enough functioning that we're going to be fine here. And because it was a very efficient way just to nip that in the bud.
When you talk about, essentially they were saying, what level of support do you need to successfully navigate all the complications of getting off a plane, walking through the airport, getting an Uber or whatever you need to get.
Yeah.
And you're saying, I can do it. I don't need any extra support for that. And that's actually the shift that has happened, that in the DSM-5 definition, they now talk about, autism level 1, autism level 2, autism level 3. And, that has to do with the continuum of, how severe are you, in a sense. Severe in the sense of how much support do you need. So I think that's actually our preference to talk about, the level of support a person needs, because it's not just a fixed state in a person, whether you're high or low functioning. It's relative to an activity. But I think it's important for us to back up just a little bit and talk about what are the difficulties with these terms. And one of them is they're imprecise. How could you talk about a human being? And let's go to Howard Gardner's work on multiple intelligences now.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if there are 7, and actually they added a new intelligence a few years ago, a naturalist intelligence, that you have kind of an intuition about the natural world and the environment, in addition to, I'm not going to go through all of them, but visual, spatial, interpersonal, linguistic, intelligence, intrapersonal, knowing yourself, and so forth. How could you talk about, in a unidimensional way, that this person is high or low functioning when any novice who understands child and human development understands that we are all good at some things and not so good at other things, and that we have multiple intelligences?
So functioning and intelligence go hand in hand, but what exactly is the relationship of function versus the intelligence that informs it?
That's a great question. I think if we think of the intelligence in the sense that Gardner thinks of it as kind of the not just inherent capability to do a particular activity or task. So, for example, motor kinesthetic intelligence, we would say dancers, ballet dancers. We don't call that intelligent, we call it talented in our culture.
Yeah.
But what's involved there? Body awareness, the ability to sequence motor movements in a very, very graceful way, to be able to watch another person do it and then make your own body do it. So that has to do with not only an innate ability, but very often the practicing that goes along with that to nurture that intelligence. So the functioning would be actually the dancing. The intelligence would be the capability, the neurological underpinnings that allows you to excel in that particular area.
Okay.
That's, people talk about intrapersonal intelligence, and now we have a whole separate category that's called emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And emotional intelligence, kind of subsumes the ability to stay well regulated. That's a part of having high emotional intelligence.
Oh, no. So those two are intertwined, because I took an emotional intelligence quiz. And I think this is something that it's from Simon Baron-Cohen's whatever lab or whatever he's doing over there. I don't know. But it was something that he had published, and I took it because I was curious. And boy, I scored really low. But the weird thing is, I make jokes about myself that I'm a social idiot, but I'm not. Like, I'm socially savvy enough at least to know usually when I've gone over the line, or usually when somebody's tired of the conversation, or when they want something from me. I'm not so good at figuring out what they want from me. I'm not really good at figuring out when I'm being played like a fiddle. So I'm very gullible, very easily duped, which makes it hard to run a business.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I'm not completely mind blind, as they say. So I don't even think the quiz I took adequately reflects, my own abilities there in emotional intelligence.
And I think probably, in the instrument that was being used, they looked at very narrow slices of emotional intelligence.
Okay.
And it could be, when you say you scored low on that test, it could have been that, the slices that they looked at in terms of understanding another person's intentions. If you say you're very gullible, and you're easily duped,
yeah,
that requires reading that another person is being deceptive, that what they're saying, the words do not reflect their true intentions in interacting with you.
Story of my life.
There you go.
But there was no questions on there about the same people that I can't read if they're being deceptive. I know exactly what will make them laugh within 10 seconds of meeting them. Like, I can scan them and figure out exactly what will make them laugh and then tell that joke to make them laugh, which is why I'm good in front of an audience.
Yes. And that, interestingly, that's, I would say, that's a little bit of a superpower you have when it comes to interpersonal intelligence, that you are able to kind of size a person up, or at least look at the context and know what you can say that is going to be seen as very funny in that situation. And so it's also linguistic intelligence. Let me say that as well.
So am I high functioning or low it's all over the map. And so now I'm starting to see the problem in this language. Whereas before you and I broached the subject together, I was like, yeah, it just makes for efficient conversation. Put these people in this bucket, that bucket, and we're done. That's
right. I mean, you're putting your finger right on it. Bingo. So I'm going to give you a quiz.
Oh,
okay. And this quiz, full disclosure, are some examples from the article that I wrote. And so here we go. 30-month-old Eric is capable of doing puzzles at a level that very few typically developing 4-year-olds are able to do. However, Eric does not yet speak. Now remember, he's 2.5 years of age, okay? So he does not yet speak, and he communicates primarily by using gestures. Is Eric low or high functioning?
He does not speak verbally?
That's right.
Well, in my opinion, this is a very high functioning kid that I want to employ someday, because we have enough yakety gabbers out there. But I would also argue that my limited knowledge, and I have studied, I was an engineer, I'm a writer, I have not studied anything with development, but our world, our society runs on interpersonal communication. And if he's not able to express his ideas and communicate, it could be argued that he's not going to function at a particularly productive level without those skills, which doesn't mean that he's low functioning. he doesn't have the talent that he might need to contribute. He's really smart, but just not in that one way. He doesn't have that talent yet.
There you go. Yeah, when you say that one way. So I'm not going to quiz you on multiple intelligence theory here, but we can say that at 30 months of age, we expect kids to be saying some words and not communicating simply through gestures. There is a group of kids who are known as late bloomers, okay? Mm-hmm. But in terms of linguistic intelligence, Eric would be considered to be, somewhat deficient relative to what we expect from a child at that age, okay? But in terms of visual spatial intelligence, he could do puzzles at a level that 4-year-olds can't do.
Exactly. And he's only been on the earth for 30 months.
That's right.
That's only 30 moon cycles as he and he's already figured out puzzles. I can't even do a puzzle and I'm 43. Maybe we don't need Eric to be good at communicating.
Yes. Very, very crucial point in that it's not something that's cast in concrete and inherent in the child. It's, what does the child need to be able to be good at in their world? And we could think about maybe Eric is very capable of doing his puzzles in a room that's totally noisy and chaotic, whereas a child who's 30 months who speaks a great deal cannot focus in that kind of setting. Mm-hmm. So he might have an extra ability to focus his attention so narrowly when he does puzzles that he could screen out what else is going on. Let's go to some others, okay? Okay, so we're going to talk about Amanda, and Amanda is 8 years of age. 8-year-old Amanda is fully included in school in her 4th grade class and is doing grade level work. However, she needs periodic support from an aide to help her transition successfully throughout the day. Without such support, she may become extremely anxious and bolt out of the classroom because she gets very, very anxious and upset, especially with sudden transitions. Sometimes she'll even run outside of the school. Is Amanda low or high functioning?
Well, I think it's very hard for humans to context switch that much, and I'm sure there's an evolutionary explanation behind that. But at the same, so I would say she's very average, normal functioning, but apparently the school, our education system on the whole, seems to think it's perfectly acceptable to expect an 8-year-old to context switch without any supports. So she's,
and might I add, to context switch and stay well regulated
on her own.
Yes.
That's not her thing. That's not what she does well, but with supports, she does it fine. So I don't know. I want to jump out of the airplane now. Like, I'm done. I want to eject from the cockpit because I don't know the answers to these.
And there are no simple answers, and that's the point. Okay. So let's stick with Amanda for just one more piece of information.
Okay. Yeah.
What happens if we understand that when Amanda was 7 years of age and she was in the grade prior to 4th grade, she was in 3rd grade, and she had many fewer issues in transitioning. And when we look into it, we find out that her teacher always prepared the class, made the transitions slower, did not surprise the kids with sudden transitions. Then all of a sudden, Amanda doesn't look as challenged when she doesn't get this sledgehammer over the head of, okay, done with math, now we have to go do this.
Yeah.
So it's not just within Amanda, it's also what kind of supports are in the world for her.
Exactly. It's how much do we consider that for every Amanda who will stand up and run, there are 4 almost Amandas who can't get themselves situated in the next topic until 15 minutes into the class period, who are then feeling like, wait, what are we talking about? Because I'm still kind of in last class period. This makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And, well, let's go to the next example. Okay?
Yep.
So we're talking about Jose, and Jose is 15 years old. Jose is not capable of speaking, but he communicates with a number of speech-generating devices. Okay, so he communicates through his MacBook, he communicates through his iPhone using speech-generating software. He's partially included in high school classes. He has a modified curriculum, but he spends at least half of his day in special learning environments in the school. Okay? He loves to greet others. He loves to stay with his friends in the playground. And he, in general, is emotionally well-regulated at school. He's well-liked, and people think of him as an engaging young man. Is Jose low or high functioning?
Oh, jeez. Socially, I mean, what 15-year-old kid is well-regulated and well-liked? So socially, he's a superstar. And again, unless we have a context for Jose that is fine for him to be able to use assistive technology not only to communicate, but then also to give him an environment that's not the mainstream environment, we'll say. That there's a specially sort of accommodating environment that he has access to when he needs it. Without that context for him, it would be argued that he would appear to be low functioning. But if you've got that tree in front of you, you can't see the forest, which is, hey, he's hanging with his boys on the playground. He's not jaded, like he wants to welcome people and greet them and say hi. And maybe the lack of words is a good thing. Lack of like verbal words coming out of his mouth is a good thing, because I know a lot of 15-year-olds who should keep their mouth shut. And if he has to have that extra layer of thought going into, and if I'm going to type this into a system, I really actually want to communicate it. It gives you that moment of sanity check. Whereas opposed to me, I could just run my mouth and then I would get beat up all the time because my words were a lot stronger than my body. And if I felt threatened, I would run my mouth and I'd just get pummeled. But you lose all of the nuance. It's like, no, Jose kicks ass. And Jose would be like the greatest person ever to be a customer support representative. Because he wants to engage with people. He's great. And he communicates via, inputting text. And like he's like a dream employee in certain roles. And then he's, a dream partner, a dream friend in certain ways. I got to go with high functioning on this one. And so what if he can't talk? These are impossible to answer.
Exactly. Because we're trying to put these terms on people who are so much more complex than the terms are. The terms are unidimensional. People are multidimensional.
Complex,
and I want to take a quick shift here. Think about the parent's experience of having a non-speaking child who is very bright and intelligent in other ways than being able to formulate speech and articulate through speech. And then I don't know how many times in our parent retreat, especially, you hear parents saying, well, my son or daughter proved him wrong again. He's a mover and shaker. And sometimes when he gets excited, he's like a ping pong ball in the room. And people think, oh boy, you got a low functioning kid, huh? And the parent says, well, do I really try to explain how bright he is in so many ways? Is this worth it to put my energy into this right now? My kid is far more complex than the way you're describing him or her.
That's exactly right. The analog in my mind is the public school model, which is everybody has to get A's in every subject. It's like, that's completely unrealistic. Some people are really good at math and just don't really give a crap about literature or gym and then you can vice versa that all day long. But we look at that and we say, well, it's just not his strong suit. But as soon as we put an autism diagnosis on somebody, not his strong suit becomes a level of ability or function.
That's right.
As opposed to strengths, talents, or where they need support.
And I believe it is a fair generalization that when we talk about autistic individuals, those peaks and valleys very often are more extreme than they are in neurotypical individuals. So we have to understand, what is a person good at? What are their potential strengths? Because strengths very often have to be nurtured. And that's what we talk about with enthusiasms, isn't it?
Exactly. Okay, so you've sold me. All right, I'm done. I'm done with the whole high functioning, low functioning. I've chosen a side, and I will no longer use the language. But at the same time, what would you recommend to educators who, like me, went into a profession teaching with this, construct in their head? And what appeal would you make to them right now with respect to the language that is being kind of tossed around in IEP meetings or just, in the teacher's lounge or anywhere?
Yeah, I think we could talk about, and many people do this, we could talk about a student's relative strengths, and then we could talk about where a student needs various levels of support. And I think that myself and my colleagues have developed an educational model called the Certs Model.
Yes.
And the TS, Certs is an acronym for social communication, emotional regulation, transactional support.
Mm-hmm.
That last TS piece is all about the different levels of what we call, on the one hand, interpersonal supports. How do we support a student through the person we are? How do we simplify language? How do we help a child feel less anxious if they're looking anxious?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. Interpersonal support. Our other category is learning supports. Do we use a lot of visuals in teaching or movement, multimodal teaching? How do we help a child learn best? So my point is, besides giving a shameless plug for the Certs Model, my point is we see that as essential in an educational approach, that we look at every activity, whether it's math, whether it's going to the lunchroom, whether it's playing with peers during recess. And we talk about, number one, does this child have strengths or abilities that we could really emphasize, or does this student have challenges for which we have to put in supports to help him or her succeed out on recess, doing math at his or her desk, participating in morning meeting, participating in circle time in a preschool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's about, we feel that's the most respectful way to talk. How much support does this student need? And then get very specific. What kinds of supports in each activity will help this student succeed at a level that they're not succeeding at currently? It may not be at the same level as all the other students, but we want that student to feel good about themselves, that they're actively engaged in what's going on.
Takes the stigma right out of it. And boy, would that boost outcomes if a student, instead of being told like, you're low functioning, so we need to do all these things for you. If the conversation becomes, you're doing great in all these areas, and here's some areas where you need support, and there's a kid over there without a diagnostic label on him who needs support in these areas. Everybody needs supports, and these are what we're going to help you with. Right out of the gate, you feel like you're set up more for success than you are being vilified or labeled or saying, don't set your sights too high on me because I'm low functioning, or don't assume I don't need supports because I'm so high functioning, right?
Or have high expectations for me, but make sure you have the right supports in place.
Exactly.
So if you want me to reach that bar, you might have to help me reach that bar or give me the strategies that I could learn to reach that bar by myself.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And I won't laugh at you when you can't reach a bar that I can easily reach since age 2.5.
That's right. Absolutely.
All right. Well, we have changed a perspective.
I do want to add one more element.
Oh, okay.
And that's my obligation to come back to the caregivers and the parents. Okay? The language we use and the reputation we give a child by the language we use has a lot to do with developing a mutually respectful and trusting relationship with parents and caregivers. Yeah. And sometimes whole groups of people in a school become invisible to a parent when they get the sense that as a school, that their son or daughter is not valued as a member of that school. Mm-hmm. And that spins off into litigation, looking for another school. And many parents who are listening, I hope you have not experienced that. I mean, I love the wonderful stories when parents say, no, I know they love my daughter or son, and I know despite his or her challenges, they don't go there. They see him as a whole human being and really try to work on what he's good at, nurture the seeds of potential and put the supports in place for things that he's really challenged by.
And we need more of that, because we both still hear a lot of stories that are kind of contrary, where it does have to come to litigation, and nothing good comes from that because it takes so long. And now the kid's in 9th grade and they have to start all over in high school with a new set of, but the hope comes from all of the many educators, learning environments that are getting it right.
Absolutely. That's right.
All right, before we wrap it up, I'm enthusiastic to know, what is our enthusiasm of the week?
Oh, do we have an enthusiasm of the week?
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna get a little over the top on this because it's one of my enthusiasms.
Ah, okay.
Ready? Egrets, herons, geese, swans, crows, seagulls. My son gets up just to look out the window to see if the egrets are on the pond. We go to parking lots to see and feed the seagulls. One day there were 8 egrets on the pond and he was thrilled. And the reason I love this is we're lucky enough to have a little place down on the coast. And as I'm speaking to you, I'm looking at all the ducks on the pond.
Oh, no way. That's awesome.
And so we are on a Northeast flyway where we get all of the birds coming up in the spring and then leaving us. So the Canada geese are gone. Still ducks are around. And Fred and Ginger, our resident swans, pretty much stay here the whole year.
Did the swans scare away ducks and egrets and everybody else?
It's like a battlefield.
Oh, man.
When, if the swans, it's interesting that sometimes they'll do it, sometimes not. But if a flock of Canada geese land on the pond, we could actually look down from a higher level and you see the swans get their feathers up in combat mode, and they go like battleships. It's a small little pond across the pond until they chase all the Canada geese off.
Gosh.
Yeah.
See, that's okay with me. I am not a fan of geese, but every other type of waterfowl, big fan. But, well, here's the conversation that you had with Blake and his mom, Mary. Check this out.
Mary and Blake, welcome. We are so pleased to have you on the Uniquely Human podcast. And Mary, thank you for submitting Blake's enthusiasm.
Yeah, he's got many, but that one has been like the summer enthusiasm.
You want to tell us a little bit about it, Blake? About your love of birds?
We see egrets and herons by our lake, and ducks, and sometimes geese.
So what's your favorite thing about seeing the birds on the lake?
Look at them. Right there where they live. But I saw a flamingo at the zoo on one leg.
Isn't that amazing how flamingos could stand on one leg?
Yes. See seagulls too, and pigeons by Sam's Club.
Seagulls, pigeons by Sam's Club, huh?
Fighting for food.
So Blake, do you like to watch videos about birds, or what do you do to learn about birds?
I was watching the video Goliath Heron versus African Fish Eagle.
Oh my God. Have you ever seen the movie Fly Away Home? It's one of my favorite movies. It's about Canada geese, and it's about a little girl who takes care of a Canada goose, but then tries to help the goose get back to its family.
Does that sound like a fun movie to watch?
No thanks.
No, it's like Blake's a man of few words and stuff. He, I would say during the spring when we take a walk almost every day, because that was on his thing for school. They wanted him to do something for exercise every day.
Good idea.
And we saw geese in the middle of the street. He said that he thinks that he started to like the birds when he saw an egret by Target. And yeah, and then there's been egrets on our pond behind our house for years, but all of a sudden he's just been, he'll look at them and he just seems to get very calm. He tries to get close to the egret and then the egret flies away and stuff. But we go to another lake, called Lake Catherine, where there's swan and geese and ducks, and it's just a calming thing for him. He just seems to like to watch them on the water. Mm-hmm. And then when they all fly at one time, when we come up by the pond over here, there's a little area where the ducks kind of hang out. And when we get close, they all fly away at the same time. And he likes to do that too. So, but yeah, he loves them.
That's great. Blake, do you ever see the swans chase any of the other birds away?
Oh, come on. Remember when we were at Lake Catherine and they were chasing the geese away? Mm-hmm. That one day? Yeah, we saw that. He's got an eagle eye and he can see how they camouflage themselves, and he'll be like, there's an egret. And I'll be like, where? And he finds them every time. He's really good.
Right.
We every now and then we get a great blue heron that stands on a rock. And it's kind of camouflaged. You have to have really good vision to see it. And I bet you Blake would be
the Goliath heron.
What kind of heron?
Goliath heron.
A Goliath heron. He looked that up and he saw a Goliath heron. I don't know what that is, but he does.
Blake, I have never heard of a Goliath heron before, and I'm going to have to look it up now. What color is a Goliath heron?
Gray and red.
Gray and red. Okay. Yeah, our heron that lands on our pond is just gray. And he or she, I'm not sure if it's a boy or a girl heron, but just sits up on the rock, looking very, very proud, and just watches all the other birds. Do you ever give names to the birds that you see?
No.
I tried that.
Oh, okay.
Saw the parrot.
A parrot?
Saw the parrot at Elsa Nursery, Dad and I.
Oh, with your dad? Parrots are very, very cool.
It's the African gray.
Is it a talking parrot?
But didn't talk.
It didn't talk. Okay. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, Mary and Blake, thank you for chatting with us. And you have been chosen as the enthusiasm of the week. And I don't know if your mom told you, but that means that you get a special present from us. So my friend and my co-host, Dave, who could not be on the call right now, he wrote a book. And he's on the autism spectrum, and he wrote a book about his marriage, and he wrote a book
moment of truth here.
His family. And I wrote a book called Uniquely Human, so you can choose which book you want. Oh, yeah.
And I do want your book. Sorry, Dave, I know you're not listening, but I'm going to ruin your winning streak here. He's telling me that he forgot something about...
Sure, Blake.
Not reality shows don't have COVID-19 and mask. CBS, NBC, ABC, WGN, and Fox. I just want to see my dad has a mask and he is safe.
Yes. Yeah. And it's important to wear a mask. So thank you for bringing that up. And so you don't like it when you see reality shows and people don't have masks. It sounds like you don't like that.
Is that right, Blake?
So it's not reality shows because they don't wear one.
Okay.
They're just pretending.
Oh, they're just pretending.
They're acting.
Okay.
It's pretending.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Acting is like pretending. That's for sure. That's great. Okay, so you broke the streak and you're going to get a signed copy
I would love that.
Did you hear that, Dave?
Very well deserved, sir.
Can I tell you how we came to know who you are?
Sure.
I think it's pretty cool.
Sure.
I'm a paraeducator, and during when COVID first started, we had to do professional development, and one of your podcasts were one of the things that we could watch. And I loved your narrative about changing your mindset about obsessions versus enthusiasms. And it's a much more positive way to look at how he tries to engage himself in conversation and things like that. So it's really, I loved it. And I just was so excited when you called or you sent that email about this, because I just really admire your book and everything that you're about. And,
Excuse me?
oops, he has something to say.
I like
Yes.
watching TV shows in Spanish.
Oh, do you? Are you learning some
Just the
words?
language.
Oh, does that help?
Switch the language.
They switched the language. Okay, so are you learning some Spanish words?
Yeah, not like the neighbor next door. The new neighbor
Okay.
with the big dog.
With the big
Neighbor
dog.
has a big dog,
Uh-huh.
and he loves the new dog. So dogs are another one of his ongoing enthusiasms. So he has quite a few.
And next door, a Newfoundland and a retriever.
Those are big dogs, especially in Newfoundland.
Okay, we need to say thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Barry. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All
Bye-bye.
right.
You know what I love about these enthusiasms is that whatever the enthusiasm is, how boring are people who are not enthusiastic about at least something? You know, that's what's cool. Like when somebody has this demonstrated enthusiasm, you want to hang out with them because it becomes infectious.
It's so true. Absolutely so true. So, okay, you want to do the takeaways?
Let's do takeaways. If you can somehow summarize an hour and 15 minutes with Robert and an hour and 15 minutes together into 3 takeaways. This is why I'm glad this is your job, because I can't summarize anything.
Well, I just literally jotted down 3. So that's as we were talking. 3 takeaways from today. I think the first takeaway from our discussion with Robert is how important it is to understand the depth of a father's love and respect for his son. And Robert, of course, as he mentioned, speaks a lot to dads, because so often dads don't have those opportunities. Dads of a family member, dads of children on the spectrum. And how even at his son's 40th year of life, Tariq's 40 years old, he still is learning from Tariq. And even though Tariq has a lot of challenges, and as Robert says, he doesn't speak, he's also intellectually disabled, it's a journey for him. The takeaway is we're on our journey with our family members and our kids, and there are always the opportunities for learning. And Robert is saying his learning is more rich in his son's 40th year than it's ever been before.
Continues.
Yes. Yeah. I think another takeaway comes from Robert as well, and the importance of understanding not only systemic racism in our culture, but systemic racism at the intersectionality of having a disability and being a minority person, because his son Tariq is African American.
Right.
And that experience, and how important it is, especially emphasized by events in the last year, for us to think very, very seriously about that, which does get to our relationships with parents, parents of color who have children of color, especially for those of us who are kind of white, middle class, mainstream Americans, and how we have to really know how to reach out, respect people, respect their values, their religious values, their cultural values, but at the same time, as part of that, making such families feel very, very welcome, that we're all in this together.
We're all in this together, and it's going to take a long time to dismantle systemic racism, but you can shortcut certain things if you've got, the right help.
Mm-hmm. Very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, takeaway number 3. When you are asked, oh, is your son or daughter or your new student high or low functioning? The answer is no, that's the wrong question. And say, the right question is more like, what is he good at? What motivates him? Where does he need more support? How could we be cognizant of that in making him or making her more successful in school, in the after-school karate class, at a picnic with her cousins? Those are the right questions to ask.
What are the transactional supports?
Yes.
That make high and low completely irrelevant terms.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Good.
Well, thank you very much, Barry. And if you are listening to this and you're enjoying it, please do us a favor and head on to uniquelyhuman.com and just drop us a note and say hi. And if you're enjoying the show, and certainly if you've got enthusiasms, whether they be egrets or artwork or anything in between, we want to know about those so we can celebrate with you and help to grow this community. So uniquelyhuman.com is where you can join us in growing this community. And while you're on uniquelyhuman.com, click the link to Matt Savage, who provides all of this music to our show. It was no mistake why we chose him. So you can buy all of his music. You can download it, buy it from Apple. In fact, I purchased directly from Matt Savage a couple CDs, Barry, and they arrived in the mail. So now I've got CDs, I've got downloads. So anyway, thank you, Barry, and thank you everybody so much for listening. We hope you'll enjoy this beautiful piece from Matt Savage.